So, a lot of people, I will get to my talk. I think the talk is very broad, so I'm going to try to see how we can make it accessible. A lot of people ask me, well, how did you experience Orthodoxy throughout your years of education? Did it bring you closer to the church? Did it distance you? Because a lot of people say, well, theology is for atheists. I hear that often, too much. Or theology are people who don't believe in God, and they're academics, and they tear up scripture and all these other things. And in my personal experience, and there's seminarians here as well, they can attest to that, I think it brought me closer to the church than ever, and to the experience of God. And because I delved deeper, it's not about knowledge or just, I know theology and I throw my book and that's it. It's not a knowledge of books or a list of truths, but it's an experience, and it's a lived knowledge experience of who God is. And I experienced that personally in academia. And I hope as well through the teachings of the church we can experience the church better. So, we all have minds, and we all, especially as cops, we are rigorous in our success and our education. But I think sometimes when it comes to faith, we kind of tend to put it on the wayside, in my opinion. Not everyone. We sometimes make the excuse that say, oh, I want my faith to be simple. And so sometimes we don't want to engage our minds that God has given us and given us to enlighten ourselves and enlighten each other. So we have a mind to engage with our faith and to understand the Orthodox truth. Okay, that's a very long introduction. So, why Orthodoxy? This is a very large topic. It's actually supposed to be probably covered in a year, maybe 3 lectures. We were talking about 3 lectures. But I'm going to try to do it in 45 minutes. We'll see how that goes. So if you have pressing questions, just raise your hand. If not, we'll hold them to the end. Okay? I also gave you handouts, so we'll go through some points. We're going through 3 main points. These are just my personal thoughts and my readings and what I thought would be personal to how we can make Orthodoxy accessible and livable. Okay. So, when we first think about Christianity, sometimes when we think about Orthodoxy, it's something, we don't think about Christianity. At least sometimes when I hear about Orthodoxy, I think of something other than Christianity. I know it sounds weird, but sometimes I think as Orthodox Christians, we have to say, I'm Orthodox Christian or Christian Orthodox. Oftentimes we label ourselves as a human being. We can say, I'm a Copt. But what does that mean? I'm Coptic Orthodox. But oftentimes we actually forget the Christian aspect. I'll explain later. There's a quote from the book, Metropolitan Police Square. He says, Christianity is being on a journey. He says, to be a Christian is to be a traveler. We live in tents, not in houses, for spiritually we are always on the move. We're on a journey through the inward space of the heart, or a journey not measured by the hours of our watch or the days of the calendar, for this journey out of time into eternity. And so when we talk about our experience in the church and our experience with God, we talk about a journey that we begin with Him, a journey through the inward part of the heart. And we express ourselves and we say, the only way I can know God is to experience Him in this path of life, in this journey. And like I said, oftentimes we think Christianity or Orthodoxy is a set of rules. I have to do this many prayers, I have to do the Beya, I have to do Tzvaha, I have to do the Shea, liturgy, all these types of checklists in order to be labeled as Orthodox. If I ask myself, what does it mean to be Christian Orthodox? We might come with some different ideas, right? We'll say, well, we pray liturgy really long, right? We have Coptic, we're from Egypt, right? We have these short, quick phrases. We don't go into the depth of the meaning of our faith, that it's actually a journey. I'm in a journey with my Savior. I'm in a journey in the life of the church. And then you say, okay, what is this journey? This journey begins with our experience with God. So, maybe it's bad math, but I said birth twice because we reborn twice. Well, right. So it begins with our birth, obviously, into this world. We're born into this life without our will, right? We're born without our consent into the parents, into culture, into our faith, you can even say. But we begin this journey nevertheless, by God's will. We are all chosen and meaningfully chosen by God. And so we could say, how do we experience Orthodoxy at this moment? Obviously, we know that in the waters of baptism, we come into the church, right? We are reborn, we're recreated. Now again, when we think to ourselves, I always ask this question, people sometimes give me Sunday school answers, what is baptism? Some things you can answer. So we say, what is baptism? Some people will say, forgiveness of sins. Original sin is removed. I get the Holy Spirit. Again, we're quick to have these sort of short phrases, but we go into the depth of who I am as a human being. And so who I am as a human being begins at not only in the physical part of the experience of my life, but in the church. The only way I could experience my life and my real being is in the church and in Christ. Because when I say in baptism, I die to the self, I die to something, right? And I put on a new life, I put on Christ, right? There's a new creation and a new restoration. And so I'm going to go into St. Athanasius a little, so bear with me. If you want to follow up more, you should read the book. Everyone needs to read the book on the information. So when we talk about the rebirth of ourselves, we're talking about a new person, right? St. Paul talks about putting on Christ, a new creation, all this language, right? Then you think, okay, well, I'm already a person. That makes no sense. Why do I have to go, be dunked 3 times, cry? I don't even remember. It's 40, 80 days, depending on for a girl, right? And all these other weird things, these weird rituals that the church does. It makes no sense to me. I don't remember my baptism, unless any of you were baptized later. And this funny ritual and all these long prayers, and it's just so distant to me. What does it matter to me? But St. Athanasius talks about this rebirth. And the only way I will understand is my purpose and my life in the church, putting on Christ. So if I ask myself, what does it mean to be human? What do you think? What does it mean to be human? Throw thoughts. I need to feel like you're awake and engaged. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human? Yes?
To be in the image of God.
Okay, good. Where does that come from? Bible trivia. Genesis. Yes, chapter 1, 26, 27. So, from the beginning of our birth, our first birth, right, we're made in the image and likeness of God. We know the story, we fell, we sinned, we fell out of paradise and so forth, right? So now the responsibility of the church that has been entrusted by God, God is present in the church, right? That now you come and you become recreated in that image. We lost that image because of our sin, right? We lost that separation, or we had that separation, right? We lost that union. And so now in baptism, it's not only a new birth, but a new person. And so I lost that person, that personhood of being made in his image and his likeness, according to Genesis 1:26, right? And now I'm recreated new. So going back to my question, what does it mean to be human? It means to be made in the image and likeness of God. And the only way I could be human is to be made in the church, to be reborn in the church. This is my baptism. There's a famous Russian theologian in the 20th century. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. His name is Father Alexander Schmemann. Great writer, great theologian. And he writes a lot in depth about baptism and Eucharist, especially. But he says, we oftentimes think about baptism as a nice, cute little certificate, and we have those cute little pictures, and we have the Pope there, we're superstars, right? But it's something that we forget, right? And there's a root and all that stuff, right? It becomes very private. And we forget that this begins our birth and the beginning of my journey with God. It is that image and that likeness, that stamp that I've lost. So it's only through the church I can know how to be human. Okay? And how to be human is only having the stamp of Christ. Okay. Did I lose anyone? Don't lie to me. Okay. I'll repeat, and hopefully it'll be clear better. And the only real human we look to, obviously, is Christ, right? So many Christians, what we wear on our wrists, right? What would Jesus do, right? I don't like it so much. Say, who is Jesus, right? It's not only what he does, but who he is. So him being God can only teach me how to be human because he is the perfect human who came into flesh. And that only happens again in baptism, right? So again, my rebirth happens in the church. I cannot learn how to be fully human outside the church. It does not work. Okay? And so when I'm touched by the waters of baptism, okay, I experience a new life, right? A new life with Christ, with recreation. I put up the old man. All this language St. Paul uses, right? Hopefully you read our Bibles, right? And once I touch God, or God touches me, I should say, okay, that my life has no end, so to speak. In the sense that my life touches eternity. Okay, what does that mean? Very nice philosophical phrase. Okay, my life now begins and touches the face of God. Right, I'm being made in His image and His likeness. I'm being transformed, and now I'm made into eternity. So I think there's a verse in Ecclesiastes. I'll find the references. You made the hearts of men into eternity, or something. We have eternity in us. Okay. So once we are born into the church, we have the stamp of God, and there is no end. So why Christians always say, well, there is no death by a departure, right? Because we look for the eternity, the life to come, the resurrection, right? As Christians, there's no death, right? The spiritual death, we should say. But there's no end because I touch eternity. I touch God now in the waters of my baptism. And that's why, again, when you go and you look back, how am I a Christian? I have to be baptized, right? ABCs, right? So it's only by putting on Christ I become part of Him and in the church. There's no other way. I cannot come and approach the Eucharist. I cannot come and participate in the church without this first step. And this first step, again, is the beginning of my journey. And this journey, again, has to be transformative. When I think back on my life, or even now, and I say, okay, what is my experience of God? You know, it might come like, oh, you know, I got an A on that paper, or oh, when this happened, or oh, he answered, or oh, I didn't get into that accident, and I said, Susalim, or whatever. We have our little things, we put God, we box Him in, and we say, oh God, I'm going to carry you in that little box, and whenever I need you, I'm going to tap you, and you're going to be there for me. Okay? That's when I experience God. So God is on my time versus the other way. Right? So when I say, what is my experience of God? In Orthodox Christianity, it says my whole life is the experience of God. There's a nice verse in the Psalms. David says, I am prayer. He said, okay, that's weird. What is prayer? How am I prayer? In that, I experience God in every moment of my life. I have His image and His likeness. I'm recreated. And my experience is infinite. It does not end. Right? Like I said, it doesn't end. Because I touched eternity. God is eternal. Okay? So when I box God in and say, okay, I'll say my day of prayers in the morning, and then maybe if I have enough energy at night, I'll pray to Him and do this, and then I'll roll up to liturgy right in time of the gospel so I can make it and Buddha doesn't yell at me. I'm putting God in a box. I'm not experiencing Him fully in every moment of my life. We compartmentalize as Americans, I think, right? We have our work, we have our life, we have our friends, we have our families, da, 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 da. But God is also in a box, and I carry Him as I please. So the answer is my experience with God in every breath. St. Gregory Nazianzus, St. Gregory the theologian, the liturgy we have in the Catholic Church, says we must remember God by every breath. He said that's crazy. Okay, we're not monastics. We're in the world. We have stressful lives. We have thoughts. Da, 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 da. But the idea is in Orthodox Christianity, I experience God in everywhere I go. It's not that I literally am like I'm having a conversation and okay, I have to stop talking because I have to be praying. No, it doesn't make sense. Okay. But when David was saying I am prayer in the sense of God has stamped Himself on me and constantly in His presence. I'm constantly experiencing Him. I'm constantly on that journey of a transformative heart. Okay? And so when you're in that crisis, it's not like God is my little personal genie, okay? But He's there, because I know He's there. It's not only in times of emergencies or when I need that exam, but He's there because I know He's there and He's my Father. And His stamp is on me. And that's my experience of Him. And that every breath I take, I know that every breath relies on Him. Because the breath that comes from Him, He has given me life as a life giver. I used to live in London for about 6 years. So the youth, we're talking about the presence, being in the present, right? Especially now, we're constantly, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, our experiences of life in general, right, are in the future or the past. If we're fixated on a problem or something that someone hurt us, we constantly, rewind ourselves over and over and over and over, right? Maybe we do this, maybe not, okay? So we're fixated on the past. We're constantly in that. We're locked in that situation. We're locked in that event. Or if I'm looking forward to something in the future, when I'm going to get that job, when I'm going to get married, when I'm going to move out, when I'm going to graduate, right? And it's okay to look forward to things. I'm not saying don't. But if we're not focusing on here and now, we're losing on that experience. Okay? We lose on the experience of who God is. And I love this because if anyone, I think some of the Coptic icons have it, but this is a Greek icon. If you look at these 3 letters, it's in Greek, and it's on, and in Greek it means I am who I am. And this is from Exodus. Where? Exodus chapter 3, I think verse 14. When Moses encounters God, and God tells him what? Very weird thing. What does he tell him? It's like, I go back to Egypt and people ask me who you are, what do I say? And God says what? I am who I am. What does that mean? It's like, thank you very much. Sorry?
He said, he told them, tell I am. He said, tell them I am sent.
Yeah, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean? I am. Okay, that doesn't help me. You're a verb. Okay, I need a noun. What does it mean? What do you guys think? He's what? He's inevitable. Okay.
The being.
He's the being one. Meaning what? I am. What is the verb tense? I am. The present. Okay? God is always in the present. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Right? Hebrews. And so God is always here. Because he's out of time. I'm not going to go into that. He's eternal. And so when I experience God, I hope I don't lose you. When I really, really experience God in my life, my journey, okay, I'm forced to be in the present. Okay? I'm not fixated on the past because my mind is here now. I'm not fixated on the future. I'm experiencing my life here now. And by the way, American culture has a lot of like movements of like, you know, the whole meditation, yoga, be here now, and
Be in the present.
be in the present. Who's that famous author? That book. I have that book. Oh, it'll come to me. He's on Oprah. Oh, it's gonna annoy me. Okay, it'll come to me. Anyway, he's written a very famous book on being here now, or the power of now. The power of now. Not Deepak. Eckhart. Thank you. Eckhart. This is Eckhart Tolle. Fine. Just Google it. Okay. And he talks about. He's not. I don't think he's Christian, but he actually quotes Jesus, which is interesting in the book. But he talks about the importance of being now, here now. When we lose the opportunity of being somewhere else with our mind and past and future, we lose our experience of living. And in that loss of experience, we are losing the experience of orthodoxy in God. So when I'm really in the presence of God, I'm really fully living my human experience. And that lived experience is only in the church, through baptism. Because I have now put on Christ, and I have the power to experience that. Okay. I'm just mindful. So, when we talk about experience, there has to be an element of participation. Now, for me, when I hear participation, I don't know, my brain thinks liturgy. Because, you know, this is the most pivotal time we all gather as a community. We all ask for forgiveness. We all come in prayer and all this in unity because of peace, right? And we all come to partake of the Lord's table. Okay? If I want to have an authentic experience, an Orthodox experience, I cannot be a bystander or a hearsay. Let's think of an example. I'm really bad at examples, but I'll give you this one. So, anyone's tried Magnolia's Bakery?
Yeah.
No?
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay. You guys are New Yorkers, right? I'm not a New Yorker, but I've tried it. Okay. Anyway, if I come and I tell you, anyone know the famous banana pudding? No? Yes. Okay. I know I'm a foreigner, so agree with me. If I come, if you've never tried it, and I come and explain to you how amazing it is, how fluffy, how it's the perfect taste of sweet, and it's light, and it's sweetness and satisfaction. It's not too heavy, but it's not too light, but it's just right. Okay, and I tell you, I'm not very good at this. But if I kind of convince you, okay, go and try this, you're going to kind of want to experience it yourself. If I just describe it to you and you've never tried it, it's like, it doesn't do it for you, right? Yes? Agree? If I describe to you chocolate, you never tried chocolate, very different when you try chocolate, okay? Very weak example compared to the experience of God, okay? I could sit here until tomorrow morning, I will not, and tell you, okay, and I'm telling myself as well, we are on a journey. in the inward space of the heart to experience who God is, here and now. And if I tell you, and you're here and listening, and you're ready, no, but I don't go and I have that deep inward experience of the heart, it's just going to be hearsay and mere words. I'm going to be a bystander. I love this quote. It's from Callistus where he says, God has children but no grandchildren. Meaning we all have the responsibility and the gift to know him personally. Okay? And again, this is only through and in the church. My direct encounter with him. When I ask you, what are my experiences with God? Okay, they should be all different for all of you, right? More or less. God touches you in a different way. Maybe you see him in a person or a loving act, or God provided you, right? But there has to be a very personal touch. Yes, we come together in liturgy and prayer, but each person here has to have that direct encounter with God. Or I become like a grandchild. I just hear and I attend the prayers, I attend the liturgy, the tizbah, and then it doesn't transform. There's no experience. There's no real authentic participation. I was debating to tell you the story because I don't want to make people look bad. But I'll tell you the story, and I'm hoping you won't think. Okay, I'll tell you the story. So I was in seminary about 10 years ago. I went to Greek school in Boston, and they have a yearly trip. They go to a Greek monastery. And I found out the name, so I'll tell you later. Anyway, and it was like a small group. It was a very small school. So I think I was one of a few girls. Anyway, so I went. And I said, okay, I want to go and have a retreat and whatever. Long story short, as most monasteries are very strict, this Greek monastery was very, very strict. And somehow one of the monks found out I was Oriental Orthodox. We're not in full communion with the Greeks. I don't want to confuse anyone, but that's all I'm going to say for now. So, meaning we can't take communion in the Greek church, right? So I went there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to attend liturgy. I'm going to participate. I'm going to have it. I don't want to be a bystander. I want to go and attend the liturgy and the prayers, right? So I go in, and I attend right until the creed. And I'll tell you why the creed. And then someone comes to me, and the monk comes by me, and he's like, are you Coptic? And I said, yes. He's like, okay, you're going to have to go to the back side of the church. I'm like, okay. And so I walk, my humble little self, very sad. And I said, okay, I'm going to accept this. It's okay, because we're not communion, whatever. I studied liturgy, and this is their formality, or whatever. And then so I was in the narthex, which is once you enter the church, like before the doors, right? So you can't enter the church, right? So I was like, I feel like I'm a heretic. I'm not participating. I'm a bystander. I feel like I've totally been kicked out of church, right? All these thoughts are not very happy thoughts. All these thoughts are going through my head, and I'm like, this really sucks. And anyways, I'm not going to go to the end of that story. But the idea was that how do I feel as a Christian that I'm not participating in this liturgy, right? Can you imagine if you walked in liturgy and someone was like, okay, after the gospel you can't enter. Some churches still have this. Okay? You feel like you're isolated. You're not participating, you're bystander. You're like, okay, what's the point anymore? But oftentimes we do this in our experience with God. We are bystanders often. We cheapen our experience with God by asking him I want my experience with you only because I need you. Only when I need that exam. Only when I need that job. So I rub my little lamp. Okay, God, I want that grade. So God becomes my little personal secretary instead of my father. And so in that, we reduce God to nothing almost, okay? And we completely lost the understanding of Christian orthodoxy, of my full experience of God in his life in the church. And in having an authentic relationship, we have to, again, when I experience God. Sometimes we say language like, oh, I didn't feel God today, so he's not here. I know a lot of us are feelers, it's fine. But we don't, again, reduce God to a feeling. He's much more than that. It's an authentic relationship. Can you imagine every time, if you're married or if your parents or whatever, you say, I didn't feel their love today, for whatever reason, right? But you know that it still is there, and that relationship is still existing, right? And sometimes we even reduce our experience to guilt, right? So I go to liturgy because I have to. I'm going to feel guilty if I don't, because God's going to punish me. There's a lot of language that we use right? So now the motivation of my participation is by guilt, not by authentic love and genuineness to know who he is. And even if I don't feel his presence, I know that he's there, and that comes with faith and knowing who he is, that he will not leave me or abandon me, as he tells us in Scripture. There's a nice quote by C.S. Lewis. He says, I don't have it up here. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, and not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. So even if I don't feel God in this moment, if I failed that exam, God, I asked you, and you didn't hear my prayer. Okay? I don't feel you, I don't experience you now, okay? But I know you're still there. So even when the sun does not rise, well, the sun always rises. If I don't see the sun, we know it rises, right? Logical sense, right? If you live in England, you probably believe that because the sun is never there. But the sun is still there. So C.S. Lewis is saying, I know the sun is there and the sun is rising. And even though I don't see it, but I still know he's there. That is my experience with God. Again, a lot of times we reduce it to feelings. It is not an emotional feeling, it is not an emotional high, but it's based on my knowledge and my personal experience with him. I remember one time, a priest, a spiritual guide was telling me, Donna, a good exercise I would recommend to you all as well. When we forget about God's presence, or we feel like God has neglected us, or go through a very dark time, all these things, right? We go through, I think, hard times, right? It says, write down everything that God has done for you in goodness. All the great things he's done. And remind yourself. Because sometimes as humans, we think about all the negatives, right? We come home, we complain. No, but we forget to be thankful. Gratitude is what God's will. Verse 7 and 5. If we want to do the will of God, it's gratitude. And so, my experience has to not be reduced only to a feeling. It has to be based on faith and an experience of knowing him. And so the church also, if you look at the church, right, is teaching us how to pray, how to fast, how to live, how to have communion with him. And it's only through the church I could participate in him in him fully. Okay. I'm going to have to jump through. All right. When we think about orthodoxy, I want to ask you, I already put 2 adjectives. What comes to your mind? Be honest. Traditionalist. Yes. Besides what's on board. What else? Archaic. The ancient. Same thing. Archaic. Yes. Apostolic. Okay. What else? Conservative. Original. What else?
An uncle with a nasally voice.
Yes.
Sorry.
Right. My God. Okay. What else? What else? Strict. What else?
Praying in a language I don't understand.
Praying in a language I don't understand. So foreign. What else?
A lot of fasting.
A lot of fasting. I was waiting for that. What else?
Everything.
A lot of Egyptian cultureness. What else? Advocate.
I think a lot of blind faith. You know, that's something that I see it.
Yeah.
I feel like we do stuff, but we don't know why.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we spiritualize it. Yes. Richness. Okay. Greatness. Richness. Yes.
Just not trying to be too wordy, but I feel like it's hard to access because if you really want to get to the original, it's really it's not something from 100 years ago. You
Okay.
can just read it in English.
What is the original?
The early church fathers, reading them.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What I mean is literally reading them in their original language.
Right. I understand. Right.
Yeah.
Here's one more context. So a lot of these adjectives are positive or negative. Negative. Why? I'm sorry, I'm walking. I know I'm walking a lot. Why?
That's our experience.
That's our experience. So, are you telling me, again, I know we're being recorded, I apologize, but then my experience of orthodoxy is negative? I know we're here, thank God, but this is the problem. It could be blind faith, okay? And sometimes I think it's a language I don't understand, it's ancient, it's traditional, it's rules, fasting, But if I look at orthodoxy as a mere list of rules, I miss the whole point. And I know, believe me, I know, okay, I've been born Coptic, raised Coptic, okay, Orthodox. I know that a lot of times it's all about rules, and you have to do this or God, Zala, Baba Yesu, Zalan, and Baba Yesu is gonna cry if you do this, and all these weird theologies we teach. They're wrong theologies, by the way, okay? They're wrong. We formulate all these experiences and these ideas based on what we have, based on whatever, and we think these things are orthodox, and we miss the whole experience of who God is. And that's why when I said my first experience of orthodoxy has to be my experience of God, not a set of rules. Because then I will never experience orthodoxy as its true finest, as its truth. But if you look on the positive side, oh, this is a bad picture. So I showed you this because I fell asleep in church and I said, this is sometimes what we do. But moving on to better things. It is ancient in the sense of, yes, it's an old church, but it's a living church. Okay? The churches are still filled with prayers and with people. We're traditionalist, but we're dynamic. What does that mean? So we're traditional, we keep the tradition. Tradition, sometimes it's not a bad thing. I know it seems like, oh, tradition, it's really burdensome and we fast, but there's a depth and there's a beauty to each thing that we do. And sometimes even if it's done blindly, it's our responsibility, okay, to search and to understand. Why am I fasting great Lent? Pick up a book on the theology of Lent or theology of fasting. I have a responsibility. Sometimes we want to be spoon-fed in everything that we do. And again, there's so much I could say in 40 minutes. But again, when you go home, it's our responsibility to go pick up a book. We have Google at our fingertips and everything, right? Learn about your Orthodox faith and resources. I give you a few resources, right? So there's a power of being ancient because something that's unwavering has not been touched and has been kept for 2,000 years. Now, again, I don't want to confuse, but I'll say it briefly. Does not mean the church does not change in its practices, okay? The doctrine does not change. Doctrine, teaching the truth of Christ. That means Christ does not change, right? But things have changed. Like the liturgy has changed. Prayers have changed, okay? Everyone say, yes, the liturgy has changed, okay? There's so many things that have changed in the church, okay? You say, oh, Orthodox hasn't changed. Yes and no. What doesn't change is doctrine based on Christ because God does not change, right? That's why we hold pride of our faith, right? Because I have kept what Christ gave. It's on your handout. What Christ gave, the apostles preached, and the fathers kept. I have pride in this orthodoxy because it's right straight from Christ himself, who revealed himself, and we've kept that for 21 centuries. And people have shed their blood for that. We've seen that 2 years ago on the water shores of Libya, right? That people have shed their blood for that faith. Very powerful. So that faith is very powerful for something to die for. And we saw it. I know we hear about it all the time, and it's like, yeah, this person's head got chopped off, and they're on a wheel, and it's very gruesome. But it's real, and it's alive. And the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And by their blood and by their prayers, until today, we are here today and now. And we have to be thankful for them. And so it's not only ancient and traditionalist, but it's living and it's dynamic. And it's very real here today. I put a few pictures of Pope Shenouda because today is his commemoration. Yes?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be controversial.
No, go for it.
I'm trying to get benefit from the lecture.
Yeah.
How can there's an Orthodox experience of God, but I feel like there's so much that we have to offer that Orthodoxy has to give to the world, because of the experience that it has, like the relationship it has with God. But how do I guess make the case for Orthodoxy and that experience as opposed to the other general experiences, like the other Christian denominations, for example. I feel like one of the things about Orthodoxy is using business terms, it's not marketed well, and even though it's the best thing out there, in terms of what's available. So I don't know, how can you make the case for Orthodoxy versus Protestantism or Catholicism or anything like that?
I think I'll briefly cover it, but I'll try to answer now. I mean, I'll try to answer from people who've actually come to the Orthodox. Maybe that might help, and maybe you guys will help too. These are seminarians, so they have a lot of experience. I think with what is appealing to people is tradition, for example. So mainstream Protestantism is change and recycle and feelings and I mean, these are very, very general. Of course, it's like, there's a lot more to this. But with Orthodoxy, there's something, like you said, the best secret kept, right? And there's something beautiful and valuable that you've kept something for so long. And if you believe that Christ himself reveals himself, and that this church where God dwells has protected that faith for 21 years, and it's still producing saints and martyrs, and the saints are the living expression of the church, right? And I think that in itself is a living witness to the church is alive, and that Orthodoxy is accessible. And I know, again, we said archaic and it's irrelevant, all these things, but we need to dive deeper into the faith and knowledge. And then when I mean, not again bashing anyone, right? When you look at Protestantism and Catholicism, there's very serious issues. So for example, I was going to cover this later. So in a lot of Protestant circles, you have the theory of atonement, penal substitution, right? So you have the idea that God is so wrathful and he's so mad and he has to send his son to consume his anger and poof, and Jesus dies on the cross, right? We have this in some Protestant circles, like maybe some of you have heard it. Some Orthodox accept that, it's not Orthodox, okay? I'll blatantly say that, and I won't go into that. And then if I look in comparison to Orthodoxy, in light of Orthodoxy, why is it a problem? Because as an Orthodox Christian, I know God is a lover of mankind, right? I know my theology through the prayers of the church, right? Oh, you good lover of mankind, can we see in the liturgy? And I know God is Trinity. And there's no prayer in the church, for example, that I think that expresses God is wrathful. It all expresses his loving kindness, his mercy, his compassion. So I go to the Orthodox Church liturgy and its prayers, and I say, this is my theology, right? And then with the whole penal substitution, God does not need to be consumed. God does not need his wrath to be consumed, but it's us to appease him in our own sacrifice. And so when I say God needs to be appeased through Christ, I'm dividing also the Trinity, which is problematic. Right? So again, when we look at in that sense, that's one of like a bazillion examples, right? There's so much. And so when I look deeper into my faith, I say, wow, like this is the faith that God himself has handed to me. And so when St. Ethnos says that what Christ gave, the apostles preached, and the fathers kept, I believe wholeheartedly this is the experience of Orthodoxy. I hope that helps. There's a lot of people who've come to the faith. There's a good book called Becoming Orthodox. Have you guys read it? I haven't actually read it. Yeah.
Peter Gilchrist.
Peter Gilchrist, yeah, he passed away recently. So he converted to Orthodoxy, and he converted his whole congregation with him. And I think there's a YouTube video you showed me, right? And that it is beautiful to see the other person's experience. Because sometimes you're like, why am I Orthodox? It's boring, the liturgy's long enough, fast forever. But some people who come to the faith, they're in awe. And I think it puts me to shame. It puts us to shame. Yeah, did you want to ask me?
Yeah, in becoming Orthodox, it's about going back to the fathers as a source of teaching.
Yeah.
And that's a huge movement in many Christian denominations.
Yeah.
They want to be Orthodox and they're kind of Orthodox, but they don't even know it.
Yeah.
Like you'll even hear people say that C.S. Lewis was an Orthodox Christian and he didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And there's even some Orthodox scholars who studied the life of C.S. Lewis and make a case for him being Orthodox in his knowledge of God.
Yeah.
So I think when someone is very serious about knowing their Christianity, they're gonna have to come across the fathers.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna say, well, which Christian denomination is actually preserving this tradition? And they'll come across the Orthodox Church that way.
Yeah.
So it's more of an intellectual side of the church, I think.
Yeah.
Like you have saints who they were martyred and they witnessed in that way, but you also have theologians and fathers who wrote that also appeal to a huge group of Christians.
Yeah.
And they find that in the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Callistus Ware, for example, he was Anglican and he came to Orthodox.
So you're saying that anyone who's serious about knowing about their Christianity, they're just going to start looking back in time, in history. They're going to find the fathers, and then they're going to say, what matches the fathers today? And it's going to be Orthodox. That's what
And I think it's something it came to me and it left. What Dr. George was saying a week ago, it'll come back to me. king. But in the church, how we experience the church fathers is everything, like the church fathers described everything, so it's so relevant what they've written and we've kept and we've experienced. I think also in the book Brothers of Charisma, experiences, it talks about the Orthodox Church. Actually, I had a friend of mine, our colleague in seminary, she was atheist, I think, and she was Chinese and she's very quiet to herself and things like that. And we were such a small school, 200, so everyone knew everyone and everyone knew everyone's background. And someone told me that she converted to Orthodoxy through the book, Brothers of Charisma. And so she read, and then she went into the church and she experienced that. So even when you read the church fathers, like you read Justin Martyr from the 2nd century, and he's talking about the liturgy, which is crazy, 2nd century, and you go and you still experience that. I think that's power there. For me, that's just so powerful. Sorry, I'll come to you. Yeah.
One of the things, like, besides power, like in numbers, because I feel like here in the West, like we're saturated with a lot of Roman Catholic and Protestant theology. There's also, I feel, a lot of, so people are no longer, like, if you were to take a majority, I'm sorry, when it comes to this, they're more feelers than thinkers.
Yep.
So I feel like with Orthodoxy, you don't have a place, like currently, where there's something to oppose, like a bunch of demagogue speakers who appeal to feelings.
Yeah.
Here and like, you know, with Orthodoxy, I don't know if it's like, the early church fathers did, like they had the confession, we have the Confessions of St. Augustine, where he would say what he did throughout his life, and like, it was horrific, but it showed his reality. I feel like now, I don't know why, if there's some sort of restriction in Orthodoxy, but nobody appeals to feelings in that way. Whereas the Protestants are feeling free to do testimonials, and they reach people's feelings, which come first, I think.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I can answer in different ways, but I will say is, I mean, what is the perfect church? Orthodoxy is the perfect church, but I'm saying as culture, as language, as whatever, right? As feelings, I could say, you know, again, we can experience, I could feel God more in the Orthodox Church than in the Protestant Church.
Yeah.
Because it's what I'm used to and what I love, right? And that feeling when you go to Protestant church is like a nice high and then it just, okay, it crashes. So again, I know these are very general things, I'm not bashing anyone. But I think that can go so far when you base, again, you think about like a marriage, okay? If you base it on feelings, there's gonna be a problem. It's real life experiences, real life communication, and real life challenges together. And so that is, I'm not saying Orthodoxy is challenging. Sometimes it is for us, but I think we have to persist and God will reveal himself.
I think, I was going to say just like one point, I agree 100% with what you're saying. I just feel like since we have such a richness in our tradition, we don't have to prove that it's already there. Like the proof is in the pudding or whatever. It's there.
Yeah.
I feel like we need more people who are going to appeal to feelings. I think that's where you know it's really lacking. Because I can go to people and say the early church fathers and Orthodoxy, but they're going to think the people who are walking around are claiming the same things.
Right.
But they look nicer and they like talk to us and make us feel fuzzy inside, you know. So
they greet you at the door, they're welcoming. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and we need to be welcoming too.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'll try to answer that in the next slide to come, Peter, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Just quickly to answer Makar, I think each of us just need to ask ourselves real questions, like actual real questions, like why am I in the church? Do I actually believe in God? And if so, are all of these things that are in the church God made or man made? And I think we need to all struggle through that. And I think if we do decide or find out or whatever that they're God made, then that changes like everything. And the communion, if it's God made, that's a big deal. Like the designer of the universe made it so that I have to be in communion with him. Or like the designer of the universe made it so that like I have this priest to like fuck my feelings and confess. Or the designer of, you know, they become much more than like the uncle at the church told me I have to do this. And that elevates it to like, I mean, exponentially. And if we all in our own lives are asking ourselves questions like that, and we as a community are building each other up to be a community that asks our personal selves those things, then we as a church will be very different. Like we wouldn't even have to worry about marketing. Like we would be beaming with like results just because like you said, the proof is in the pudding. It's already built in for it to be successful.
But it's up to us to do the work.
Exactly, and the Becoming Orthodox book that Donna mentioned, they asked themselves that question. If you read that book, they started with the question that got them going was, where did the New Testament church go? Where did it go? It existed. We want to be part of that church. So let's figure out what they did, where they went, and where they are now. And through questions and deliberations and praying and really trying to be wise, they found Orthodox. It just happened naturally. And they weren't looking for the Orthodox Church. They had no clue what the Orthodox Church was at first. But just by asking questions and prodding as to is fasting really necessary or is it not, or is communion or is it not? I think we all sort of just get there. And not to simplify it, that's a lifelong thing, like Donna's saying.
Yeah.
But sorry to rant.
No, it's true. Yeah, one last time.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think we also have to remember that at least Coptic Orthodoxy is relatively new in the States. So Catholicism, all this, they've been here for a while, and I think in Egypt, they didn't really have to advertise Orthodoxy because there's only two options, And I think as, we populate, as we grow, and we start taking positions in various fields, in various, governments or branches, whatever, we're going to start seeing a trend towards that. And I think we have to, surprisingly, from the people that I know that have turned to Orthodoxy, it's the things that attracts them is not what I would expect. It would be one is the lack of bloodshed on our hands, compared to other denominations. Another would be just the hymns, So I think that's something to realize also.
And that will lead to my next slide. Thank you for that comment. Alright. I know we're almost 50 minutes, and I'm not even halfway done, so I will skip slides, don't worry. On that note, in parallel with what we were saying and what Makar was saying as well, everyone, again, with our experience, we experience God differently, and in the church there's a plethora amount of experiencing God. So I can experience through the hymns, through, hopefully not lack of bloodshed, that's not my point, but the prayers, the incense. I remember a friend of mine left the church many, many years ago, unfortunately. He goes to Protestant church. He felt people weren't welcoming, whatever. Sad. Anyways, he came back to the church, the Coptic church, and we attended a prayer liturgy, and he says, Donna, the icons, the incense, everything was just, it was transforming him. It was engaging him. So even though he left the church, so to speak, he remembers those things that transformed him and he experienced it. Okay, I'm going to finish up soon. I'm mindful of the time. There's a nice quote I like from Parents of the Fathers. I'll read it and explain. From Life of St. Anthony. 3 fathers used to travel a long way to visit St. Anthony in Egypt, in the desert every year. 2 of them would discuss their thoughts and the salvation of their souls with St. Anthony, but a third remained silent and did not ask him anything. After a long time, St. Anthony said to him, "You often come here to see me, but you never ask me anything." The father replied, "It is enough to see me. It is enough for me to see you, Father." I love this quote because again, it's part of our tradition, part of being Orthodox. Because even in that experience, he experienced God himself through Anthony. And so it's not only being Orthodox through liturgy. Okay, so when I experience God, I can say, okay, I experienced in liturgy. Some through the hymns, some through the lives of the saints, the prayers of the fathers. Some maybe came to the faith through watching people, those who were martyred, the 21 martyrs, okay? Or anything like that. There's so many aspects of the depth and the beauty of Orthodoxy you could come and connect with God. Of course, we need to participate in the Eucharist. I'm not saying we don't do otherwise. So there are different ways of discipleship. The saints, monasticism, all these things that teach us our theology and our experience of Orthodoxy. And the depth and the beauty of it. I mean, I had someone who, again, came to the faith. Well, he was Coptic already, but he left the church. I'm going to skip. And he said, Donna, I came, he said, Pope Carlos appeared to me. And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but he said basically Pope Carlos told him to read the Lives of the Saints. And when he began to read the Lives of the Saints, he experienced Orthodoxy. So this is how he experienced God, through the Lives of the Saints. I can experience God through the hymns, through the Tizbah. I can experience Him through the liturgy, through a person, through a priest, through a monk, through a mother, right? That's orthodoxy. It's experience. It's not only boxed up. It's not a list of rules. It's not a list of dogmatic truths. It's a lived experience. It's a journey. Okay. Maybe this will be next time. So I'm going to finish with signposts. I skipped point 2 is a commitment. We all give a commitment to God in our baptism. And so it's up to us to fulfill that baptism every day of our lives. Okay, signposts. Where am I? We all need direction. Okay. I think it's a song. I don't know if it is. Anyway, everybody needs somebody. Isn't that from like a cartoon? Everybody? No? Am I making that up? Okay, anyway. Ignore me. So, in Orthodoxy, we as a community come together. Okay? One Christian is no Christian, says St. Augustine, I believe. Right? And the idea is in Protestant Catholic circles, right? The theology is me, myself, and I. Why do I need the church? I could go to God and I could pray to Him in my room. We hear this, we might believe it, right? But we've lost the concept of orthodoxy as community, being one together as a body. Yeah, it's nice, it's theoretical, you're my body, you're part of the I, right? St. Paul talks about this. But in reality of the true Orthodox faith, we're a community of believers. We're all connected to each other. This is, again, everything that we say and we profess is lived out in the liturgy and the prayers. If you go during the liturgy, what's the highest point we express this of how we're united? Well, there's two. The one part of the prayer in the liturgy, deacon says to do this, and you do it because we're all part of one body. And we all get excited because we actually can do something. Kiss of peace, right? Okay, we all move around, greet one, say hi, blah, 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 right? This kiss of peace is not like a nice, cute greeting, okay? It's a real, authentic purpose and intention of us being united with each other. No one is born in a vacuum, no one is born an island. We all need each other. You even need that uncle who has his nasal voice. He's part of your body, your community, right? We're the body of Christ. Even that tunt who's screaming with a Buddha saying, what is it? Yeah, my Arabic is horrible. What do we say in Lent? The prayers? Thank you, yes. Thank you. There's always that one tunt who's screaming and praying, okay? You need her, okay? I need her. Why? Because she's part of my community, she's part of my body. I'm responsible also, okay? If I say I don't need the church, then I'm saying I don't need God. St. Cyprian, 3rd century, I believe. No one can take God as his father if you cannot take the church as your mother. It does not work. Protestant theology will teach you this in some ways. I don't need the church. I could have my direct relationship with God. Then I cut out the whole church. What is church? Why am I baptized in the church? Why am I baptized in the community of believers? Then it's just me. I go solo. It doesn't work. You're born into a community. You're born into a community of believers. And so even in the community of believers, we need our guides and our discipleship. Okay? I'll finish with 2 things. I know I'm skipping a lot, but anyway, in this concept of apostolic, someone said apostolic, the Orthodox Church is apostolic. How is that carried out? Through the fatherhood, through priests, through confession, right? I hope we all have our own spiritual guide. If you do not get one, you are missing out. It's not about I'm being embarrassed, but it's about a journey and experience that this person will guide me, okay? We all need guides and mentors. There was a priest, I think it was Nancy from DC, who saying when a lot of Americans would come to his church, right? And so one American, like they learned about confession. He's like, oh, Father, can I sit with you in confession? He's like, yeah, sure, yeah. Okay. And then they're like, is it free? And he was like, yeah, it's free. And so the mentality was, because we're in a society, like a lot of us need guidance, and we go to our counselors or our therapists and right? And we pay them to get advice. And this person was like blown away that in the church is free. And yet us, we escape Abuna, okay? We escape our spiritual guides, but it's so precious and it's part of who we are, a disciple, being a church of apostolic roots and being a church of discipleship. We miss that. Again, this is orthodoxy, discipleship. When you read the fathers, the church fathers, there's no monk who doesn't have a father, an abba. It doesn't work, okay? And those who stray, okay, who have left the faith, I hate to use the word, but I will use it for the lack of other word, heretics. Okay, I know the word has a lot of baggage. Means, heresy actually means opinion in Greek, okay? Means someone had their own opinion, okay? I know there's so many different opinions of Christianity, right? Someone had their own opinion, and contrary to what God taught, what Christ gave, the apostles preached, the fathers kept, right? And so this person, they themselves have cut themselves off from the church. It's not the church kicked them out. We think of it that way, in a negative way. They themselves cut themselves off. They were insistent, and they had their own opinion about God. And said, the church said, no, this is precious, this is the blood of Christ. God showed us who he is. Only God could tell me who he is. And you, who are you, oh man, to declare who God is? In other words, that is apart from him. That's just a snippet. I don't want to go too much into it. And so, in Orthodoxy, that's why it's so precious. We've kept what was handed down, what Christ himself told us about him. If someone comes to you and says something false about you, or someone you love, what's your automatic reaction? What's your automatic reaction? Really? Really? Like, you're in what mode? You're in defense mode. Why are you in defense mode? What happened? You feel attacked? But what else? What do you want to do immediately?
Prove the person wrong.
You want to correct the person and not prove them wrong. But even in the subtle things about our own personality or someone we love, we're on like, no, how dare you? And so, on so much an infinite greater level, when it comes to God, that's what the church has preserved. Say, no, this is what God has taught us from him himself. Who is it better to declare who God is but God himself? And this is what Christ has shown when he came as a human being. Right? This is what Orthodoxy has kept. I will finish with one quote. I skipped because I know it's late. Orthodoxy, if it is not practiced, is not true orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is a real lived experience with God. It is not a mere list of theological truths. It is, obviously, but it's also, more further than that, a participation in relationship with a person. So if the church is archaic, cultural, fasting, blah, 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 it's a list of things, I've missed the whole point of orthodoxy, in experiencing God. And I need to experience him not only within the walls of the church, the here and now, in order to experience what is my identity as a Christian and the purpose of my human life in God and in the life of the church. And glory be to God forever. Thank you for listening. I think I went a little over, I apologize. Any questions? Now, that was a very, I know it was an hour, I didn't count it, and I know it's 10:30, you guys are very patient. Very, not even a drop of what the church is and Orthodoxy is. So I encourage, again, read. When you enter the church, don't leave your mind at the door, engage, participate, experience. Yeah.
So I could pick this up as a read, definitely, but
Go for it.
I had a question about when you were speaking of prayer, and you said that, you know, so Jesus' prayer is very popular, and then St. Paul says the prayer unceasingly.
Yeah.
So when we pray unceasingly, or if I try, it's usually with the Jesus prayer. When I go to do something, you put that funny scenario where you're not going to say stop and I have to pray, but you're going to focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is there a part of my actions that are actions considered prayer? Like David says, I am prayer. Does that mean that even with my actions, this can be a form of prayer, or is that just the thought process?
So the way I see it, and you guys can add it in, anyone, is when I really have that experience, that journey of the inward place of the heart, right? The highest form of prayer, they said, is listening to the voice of God, having the stillness of the heart. If I say pray without singing, okay, it doesn't, if you look at your thoughts throughout the day, scarcely will I think about God. Let's be real. Sorry, we have to be real, okay? Scarcely. If we do, it's again, if someone's going to crash me, okay? Or if I'm running late, I hope it's more than that. I'm making a generalized, forgive you, okay? So how do we even get to that? You're it doesn't make sense, I'm not a monk, right? But it's progressive, it's a journey, right? It's the inward space of the heart. When I become and get in touch with that experience of God and that image is in me, His Holy Spirit is dwelling in me, and it's a journey, again, we struggle and we fight through it, right? We'll go through dark patches. A lot of the church fathers said God left completely then, right? Elijah said God left him. A lot of people said God left, but he never left. So my point is, in that journey, I will experience Him more and more and more, right? And then even if I'm not literally saying the Jesus prayer or any prayer, my life becomes prayer. So when I'm sleeping, I'm still praying in the concept. In Psalm 139, I believe, David says, I'll take the wings of the morning, and I'll fly, and you are there in heaven. If I take the wings and go in the depths of hell, behold, you are there. If I fall asleep and I wake, you are still there. So he cannot evade the presence of God, even in hell. So God is present everywhere. So even if I'm like doing a very mundane, boring, or heavy task, I'm still in the presence of God. I feel him. I experience him. And that, in that sense, I become prayer. You know, it's a great question because I skipped over this, but I don't know if any of you, I like to think of this. I've experienced someone very surreal, like someone very powerful presence when they enter a room. Not that very loud one, I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about like a very holy, serene presence. I would say that actually for me was Pope Shenouda. When he would enter a room, you'd feel, I felt something. And there's other people I've met in Egypt who just have that presence of God. So if they're joking, they're laughing, they're sleeping, God is surrounding them. I feel like Christ, like there's a bubble, there's something there that I can't express. And this is the goal. Again, I know it seems like you're out of your mind, it's not practical, but we're in it completely or we're not. This half measure of Christianity doesn't work. It's part-time Christianity. Can you imagine if in a marriage, you're say, oh honey, I'm married today, but tomorrow I'm not going to be married. It's like a part-time thing. Okay, if society doesn't even encourage that, how does that work in our Christian faith, in life, my experience with God? Thanks. Other questions? The handout is here if anyone came late. There's 3 books. The Orthodox Way. Again, there's some things that they're from the Eastern Church, like the Greek Church, but please read it. It's a fantastic, easy book, I think. Second book is C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. He talks about the logic of Christianity. I think it's fantastic again. Genius book. And then St. Athanasius on the Incarnation. Every Christian has to read this. Again, if you struggle with it, struggle. I mean, I remember those days of biology and chemistry, and I hated those days, okay? But I had to struggle with them. I hope this is a lot better, okay? Because this is edifying, okay? So give yourself patience and maybe even have a book club. I don't know.